Broken teeth, deep scars, which could indicate a terrible battle, which took place 65 million years ago, but until recently, no one knew about it. Years ago, paleontologists made a strange discovery while examining the fossils of a huge Tyrannosaurus. One of its teeth, not due to time, nor to decay, but rather to a brutal battle. But what was the reason for these fights? Could it be because of a big hunt? Or maybe a fight for survival? Tyrannosaurus teeth, contrary to our imagination, are not fragile. These teeth are living blades with very large roots and are designed in a way that they not only tear the flesh of the prey, but also penetrate deeply into the body of the prey. But this same feature caused their teeth to break as a result of hard battles, because as we know, Tyrannosaurus has a very strong jaw and can easily insert its teeth into the body of any prey. And there is also a possibility that its teeth hit some bones that are really hard. Recently, paleontologists discovered that some of these broken teeth of T-Rex remained inside the jaw, which means that, to put it simply, during the life of this predator, new teeth grew to replace the lost ones. This means that T-Rex had the ability to re-erect its teeth several times, but I think that these teeth were most likely not replaced more than twice, and this function was limited. It was not like T-Rex could replace each tooth 100 times if it fell out. But no, it was not like that at all. But here is a big question. What do you think these teeth were broken by in battle? Did tyrannosaurs only hunt, or maybe they sometimes killed each other? In nature, territory means survival, meaning if you didn't have a territory, you would definitely be defeated easily, and at that time, defeat meant death. And in the prehistoric world, there was no mercy. Tyrannosaurs were ruthless hunters, and their problems were not just hunting. Imagine two huge giants in the midst of the terrifying prehistoric mountains attacked each other to dominate their territories. The sound of their roar echoed throughout the land. Their powerful jaws also sank into flesh and bone. But unlike today's nature, a dinosaur that was defeated would die. Without a doubt, some of these battles were most likely of little intensity, leaving only minor wounds, but others were the end of a dinosaur's life. Scientists have been able to simulate these ancient battles by studying fossils, but what really matters is your imagination. Think about it. Even we can't stand the pain of a broken tooth. So how could these creatures stand the pain of breaking several teeth? A Tyrannosaurus loses several of its teeth during a deadly battle due to a terrible blow. The moment these teeth are knocked out, an unimaginable pain occurs in the jaw of this animal. But that was just the beginning. The teeth that broke off may have become deeply embedded in the body of the prey, or perhaps in the flesh of another competitor. You can imagine, we can't stand a small bullet or a blade in our bodies, but how could these animals endure such terrible things? Wounds that were not only painful for the Tyrannosaurus, but for the creature whose body this tooth was embedded. It was literally a living torture. But the most important thing is that this is not just a fictional story. These events are completely real. 66 million years ago, in the heart of Madagascar, in a wild and dangerous land, one of the strangest and most terrifying scenes in history took place. Scientists have made a shocking discovery while examining the bones of one of Madagascar's most feared predators. They found traces of sharp teeth in the body of a Majungasaurus, which were actually teeth from one of its own species. Majungasaurus was the apex predator of the island of Madagascar. They were powerful dinosaurs that could crush any bone with their curved teeth. But these creatures were not content with just hunting. These creatures were so vicious that when food was not available, they would eat one of their own family members in the worst possible way. Imagine a herd of hungry humans charging at you and brutally eating you. It's truly a terrifying thing to be eaten by your own kind, and these creatures were exactly like that. Now imagine you are in the dark forests of Madagascar. The sound of terrifying roars echoes around you. The smell of blood spreads in the air, and through the trees, shadows are moving. They are hungry, and worst of all, they are extremely cruel. But why? Why did a single species turn to eating its own kind? Madagascar, at that time, was an isolated island. Food resources were limited, and hunting was scarce. Hunger is the enemy of cruelty, and in such conditions, Majungasaurus resorted to a brutal choice to eat the weakest members of the herd to survive. We were able to understand through the fossils of these creatures that these dinosaurs ate each other. The bite marks on the bones indicate that this was a common behavior among these savage predators, and it had become their way of life. Now let's put you in the place of a prey mammoth. Imagine living in a world where you not only have to fear other predators, but also have to fear your own kind. Imagine that the mother who gave birth to you would one day be busy eating you, but this was a special lifestyle, because if these creatures didn't eat each other, they would have gone extinct before the meteorite. And this is one of the darkest and deadliest truths of the prehistoric world, where even predators were not safe from being hunted. And if you are curious to know more about these creatures, we made a full documentary on a dinosaur that looks exactly like this dinosaur on our channel called Maposaurus, which I recommend you watch after this documentary video. A deadly trap that lurked in the depths of the earth thousands of years ago. A black, sticky pit that silently embraced its victims and never let them go. In the heart of modern-day Los Angeles, there is a place that was the scene of horrific deaths thousands of years ago, the La Brea tar pits. Here, one of the deadliest natural traps in history was located. But how did thousands of animals get trapped in this very spot? To understand this natural disaster, we must go back in time, to a time when hunters were tricked into believing they were dead. It all begins with a deceptive mirage. From a distance, the tar pits may look like harmless puddles, but their surfaces, sometimes covered in leaves or dust, and sometimes sparkling, looked just like water. Animals that were thirsty and tired approached to drink water or find food. Their first step seemed safe, but the next moment, when their feet were stuck in this natural black hole, and the animal's foot sank into this sticky substance, and any attempt to escape would sink it further into the heart of the earth. His breath was numbered, his heart was beating fast, and every moment his hope of surviving diminished. It was a terrible life. Imagine for a second you were transposed into the karmic-driven world of Earl. But this was just the beginning of the nightmare. The sound of moans and struggles attracted hungry hunters from afar to the victims. The dagger-toothed tigers, terrifying wolves, and giant bears approached the pit with predatory and hungry eyes. They thought they could take advantage of this golden opportunity, but they were deceived by this black trap. As they rushed to the sinking prey, they themselves became caught up in the sticky black. Suddenly, this was no longer a hunting ground, but a ruthless hell from which no one escaped. The meats would disintegrate, but the bones would remain in the bitumen for thousands of years. And it was these bones that told the story of these deadly traps to the future. Today, in modern Los Angeles, the remains of those victims are still found in the La Brea pits. Scientists are digging up the fossils of animals trapped in these black holes, revealing the secrets of the past. They tell us that this place is not just an ordinary area. It is a relic of the Ice Age, a graveyard of ancient monsters, and the most brutal death in history. Thousands of years later, when these fossils were discovered, scientists were amazed by the sheer lethality of these pits. Like a natural history book, La Brea has forever recorded the story of its victims. Today, La Brea is considered one of the most valuable fossil sites in the world. I hope you enjoyed this video, and to support us, just like this video, and subscribe to this YouTube channel, and see you next time. A world covered in ice and snow, life for the two of them is like a battlefield. Only the strongest, smartest, and most ruthless survive in this harsh land. But among this burning capital, there was a group of hunters who ruled this frozen world, hunters who even the giant mammoths feared. These creatures were not like the ordinary wolves of today. They were cave wolves, mysterious and deadly hunters, larger than any modern wolf, with longer teeth, muscular legs, and a mind that understood only one thing: survival. Life was more important to the creatures than anything else. And now the question that arises is, how did these creatures survive in the Ice Age, the most brutal era on Earth? And how did they hunt in a world of certain destruction? And what even happened to make them disappear from the page of history? These creatures were too tough to be extinct so easily. But what happened to them? Today, our journey begins thousands of years ago, to the world of ice, cold, and deadly hunting. In this documentary, you will hear the answers to all your questions about the cave wolf. Stay with us. Cave wolves were no ordinary hunters. Not only were they larger than modern wolves, but they also possessed extraordinary hunting intelligence. Unlike many hunters of the time, they did not chase their prey. They trapped them. These creatures knew that physical strength alone was not enough to survive. They were masters of strategy. But every hunter, no matter how strong, one day comes to an end. The very nature that had brought these hunters to their peak had now turned against them. There were no more woolly mammoths and no more endless winters. The earth changed, and cave wolves had no place in this new world. These creatures had evolved to survive only in cold environments, and when the Ice Age ended, they faced a great enemy called nature, which we will talk more about later. In the prehistoric world, the battle for survival was always on, but some wars were more than just a simple competition for survival. Some were a fight between two predators, two of nature's most ruthless and kingly predators. Today, we'll tell the story of one of the greatest conflicts of the Ice Age, when shadow hunters and cave hunters faced off. Cave wolves versus cave bears. Cave bears were prehistoric ice monsters. Unlike modern bears, they were not only bigger, but also much more aggressive. The power of their jaws and claws would crush any obstacle in their path. But cave wolves were masters of pack hunting. This battle was a battle of power versus strategy. While the wolves were looking for an opportunity to attack, the lone bear had only one thing on his mind: to be king. This bear just wanted to hunt alone in this habitat, but the wolves were against it. This battle was a real war. The wolves knew that if they stayed united, not even a cave monster would be able to confront them and would be defeated. But even the strongest hunters don't always win. The Ice Age was at its peak, a savage world where only the fittest survived. In this frozen land, wolves stood at the top of the food chain as ruthless predators. But among all this, a big question arises. Will these hunters one day become friends of humans? While humans and cave wolves were potential enemies in this frozen world, something big was happening. Do you think it is possible that these wild hunters could become human guardians? And it is even possible that cave wolves are the early ancestors of modern dogs. But in fact, the early ancestors of modern dogs were the Tomoctus, about which we made a whole video that I recommend you watch after this video. If you have seen the Tomoctus documentary on our channel, you will notice that the Macross gradually evolved into different groups, one of which was the early Candaes, which are the ancestors of modern wolves. In general, it can be concluded that modern dogs evolved from their second ancestors called cave wolves. Not all dogs, but some breeds. And if you want to fully understand the evolution of dogs, be sure to watch the documentary Tomoctus on our channel. Deep in a remote cave, archaeologists have uncovered one of the greatest mysteries of the Ice Age: the remains of a pack of cave wolves that had mysteriously scattered throughout the site. But this wasn't just any ordinary discovery. These were powerful, ruthless hunters who had now become a trap of bones. What do you think had happened in this cave before? Why did these wild hunters suffer such a bitter fate? Here, in this frozen cave, the wolves were struggling not only with their natural enemies, but also with a mysterious and sudden threat. Perhaps these deaths were not a simple tragedy. Perhaps it was an internal conflict between pack members, or something bigger and more mysterious. According to the research we have obtained so far from the fossils of these creatures, we have found that these deaths were mostly due to conflicts over dominance, over females, and leadership of the pack, meaning that they fought fierce battles within their own pack throughout the year, and even this helped the pack's strength a lot. In the heart of these icy mountains, in a wild world where there was no mercy or compassion, there was a ruler whom no one dared to confront. These ruthless lands were in the hands of the cave wolves, peerless hunters for whom no challenge was too unpredictable. Here, amidst the snow and ice, the wolves were not only skilled hunters, but also absolute rulers of the mountains. Using their extraordinary physical strength and sharp minds, they wrote the rules of this icy world. In the frozen lands known for their severity and ruthlessness, no creature could overcome them. They did not rely on their muscles and teeth alone for survival. The wolves, the true rulers of the icy mountains, depended on strategy and cooperation at every moment of their journey. Together and in cooperation, they would trap big game and fear nothing. Cave wolves were ruthless and silent hunters who moved in the dark, lurked and attacked at the right moment. But what distinguished these predators from other animals was their unparalleled skill in group hunting. Cave wolves acted like an army. In each hunt, they had a detailed plan. No movement was without purpose, and each member of the group had a specific task. Some separated the prey from its main path, some blocked its escape route, and others delivered the final blow. Patience, precision, and coordination. These were the three qualities that made cave wolves such unparalleled hunters. They never hunted alone. Together, they could take down prey much larger and stronger than themselves. They would hide in the darkness, choose the right moment, and then, like a deadly storm, descend upon their prey. But hunting was only one part of this battle. After killing their prey, they had to protect it, for the land was full of fierce competitors. Cave wolves were fierce hunters of the Ice Age, but in the harsh, icy world of that time, hunting alone was not enough. They had to survive. There were enemies lurking that challenged even the strongest wolves. One of the most fearsome of these enemies was the cave bear, a huge giant with claws that could knock a wolf to the ground with a single blow. These bears had taken over the deep caves, and any wolf that came too close became defenseless prey. But bears were not the only threat. In the frozen snows, cave lions lurked, powerful predators that hunted in small but powerful packs. If a wolf got separated from its pack, it quickly became a victim. And among these, there was one enemy that wolves could never escape: hunger. Long, harsh winters made food scarce, and competition for survival intensified. Sometimes, wolves were forced to fight each other, and these bloody clashes could tear their packs apart. Cold is everywhere. Snow-covered ground, icy winds that blow like razors, and endless nights. Here, in the heart of the Ice Age, cave wolves fight for survival against their most ruthless enemy, the deadly cold. Endless winters, severe frosts, and dwindling prey had turned the lives of these hunters into a terrifying nightmare. The mammoth herds were dwindling, the giant elk were taking refuge in distant forests, and every day it became harder and harder to find food. Hunger was always with them like a shadow, but it was not only hunger that threatened them. In this frozen world, fierce storms could tear wolf packs apart. A wolf left alone was doomed. They either froze to death or fell prey to cave lions and giant bears. To survive, they had to become stronger, faster, and smarter. Their herds grew larger, their hunting skills improved, and they learned how to survive in this white hell. But even with all their efforts, nature was always more ruthless, and not everyone could survive these deadly winters. For thousands of years, cave wolves were the unrivaled hunters of the icy mountains. But then, they suddenly disappeared. The question is, what killed these powerful predators? With the end of the Ice Age, the world changed. The ice melted, the forests expanded, and large prey like mammoths disappeared. Hunting became harder, and competition fiercer. But that wasn't their only problem. Humans were expanding. They took over the hunting and bred dogs to replace the cave wolves. In addition, some scientists believe that humans may have hunted these wolves for their skin to make woolen clothes. The cave wolves were caught in the trap of change. They fought for prey, for territory, for survival. But in the end, they were defeated. One of the greatest predators of the Ice Age has been forever lost to history. But perhaps a part of them still lives in the genes of today's dogs, in their hunting instincts, their nocturnal howls, and their gaze that still hides a light from the past. Thank you for being with me this far. To support us, just subscribe to our YouTube channel for another video. Goodbye. Today, we are going to take a journey into the mysterious and amazing world of eagles. In this documentary, we want to show you how these ruthless sky hunters have faced various enemies throughout history. From prehistoric times to the present day, there have been various enemies who have tried to defeat eagles, or at least bring them down from the skies. But the question is, what made eagles continue to rule the skies? In this video, we will go back in time and see how eagles confronted mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, sky hunters, and even humans. From dangerous prehistoric times to the modern world, eagles' enemies have always sought to take the celestial crown of these powerful birds. So, get ready to travel together through the history of eagles and see what enemies were a real threat to these legendary creatures. Now we're going to talk about a legendary battle, but here's an important question. Did eagles really fight dinosaurs like Tyrannosaurus? The short answer is no, because eagles evolved millions of years after the giant dinosaurs went extinct. But what if a bird of prey like an eagle had lived at that time? Tyrannosaurus, a ferocious 12-meter-long giant with teeth like butcher knives, certainly had no fear of a bird. On the other hand, there were early birds of prey that were distant ancestors of today's eagles. Birds like Archaeopteryx, which roamed the trees, may have had to face terrestrial predators and find a way to escape. But what if eagles had lived at that time? Rather than engaging directly, they probably surveyed the situation from above, looking for opportunities to steal prey or attack smaller dinosaurs. Eagles are opportunistic hunters, not direct combatants. So it's true that eagles never fought Tyrannosaurus, but if they had, they would have likely come up with a clever survival strategy, just as they rule the skies today. Now, we are going to talk about two of the deadliest predators in history. One is the king of the jungle, the other the king of the sky. But were lions and eagles really enemies? The truth is that lions and eagles do not fight directly in nature, because one rules the land and the other the sky. But that does not mean that there have been no clashes between them. Imagine a large eagle, such as the golden eagle, flying over the African plains, looking for an opportunity to hunt. A lion cub that has strayed from its mother can be easy prey for this aerial predator. This has actually happened in nature today. On the other hand, if an eagle gets too close to the ground, lions may attack it, especially if it tries to steal food from their prey. Lions protect their food, and if an eagle approaches a carcass that the lions have killed, it will face the lion's fierce claws. So, lions and eagles are not direct enemies, but sometimes their paths would cross, and if necessary, they would enter into a dangerous fight. Both of them are excellent hunters who ruled their own territory. Now, we are going to talk about one of the strange enemies of eagles, a creature that neither flies in the sky nor hunts on the ground, but is a sea monster. What do whales, eagles, and whales have to do with each other? Could these two be enemies? The answer to this question comes down to something very important, namely the diet of eagles. Eagles are always looking for animal carcasses, especially near the coast. Now, imagine a dead whale lying by the sea, and that means it is a big feast for birds of prey. But the problem here is that eagles were not the only guests at this feast. In the past, when a whale came to the shore, other predators such as giant bears and prehistoric wolves also came to that area. These predators were much larger and stronger than eagles and did not allow the eagles to easily take their food. On the other hand, live whales were also a threat to the eagles because these birds of prey usually dive to catch fish on the surface of the water, but whales could create huge waves with one movement and drive the eagles away from their range. And this does not mean that whales were directly enemies of the eagles, but they always caused them trouble, whether they were alive or dead. Now we are going to talk about a strange confrontation, gorillas against eagles. But did these two creatures really fight? Could gorillas hunt eagles? Gorillas were powerful giants of the forest. With their powerful arms, they could shake trees and even knock down an enemy with a single blow. But the problem was that eagles were much faster than a gorilla could catch them. But imagine for a moment, a baby eagle in a nest high in a tall tree, and a hungry gorilla who found it there. Gorillas are usually herbivores, but if the opportunity arose, they might go for bird eggs or even chicks. On the other hand, eagles were not defenseless either. A large eagle, if it feels its nest is in danger, may attack a gorilla with its sharp talons, especially towards the eyes, which are a gorilla's weak point. So it's true that an adult gorilla couldn't hunt an eagle, but if the opportunity arose, it could be a serious threat to the eagle's chicks. and this means a hidden battle between these two creatures in the prehistoric forests, and these incidents happen very rarely in the forests of today. Now, we are going to talk about a strange battle in prehistoric times where early humans and eagles faced each other. But why would these two creatures fight each other at all? Imagine a tribe in an open plain, and there are people who are just learning how to hunt, how to survive, and even how to access a lot of food. And eagle eggs were one of the important sources of food for them. But the problem was that eagles did not let anyone easily approach their nests. Every Stone Age warrior would always approach a cliff to steal the eggs of birds and even eagles, but he would be met with a lightning attack. The eagles would attack with their sharp talons to the head and face, and could even throw a defenseless hunter from a height. However, humans were not defenseless. Some tribes even hunted eagles to use their feathers for clothing and war symbols. This meant a constant battle between heaven and earth, where both sides fought for survival. When a big change happens in nature, it's not just animals that are affected, but humans too. How did the locals and even the people around them feel now that the buffalo are back on the land? Did they welcome the change, or were they worried? Some people, especially those interested in nature and wildlife, were excited to see the buffalo on the plains. For them, it was a big step towards restoring balance to the environment. Some researchers and environmentalists even came to see this historic event up close and see how the herd was coping with its new environment. But not everyone was happy. Some local farmers and ranchers were worried. They thought the buffalo's presence could be dangerous, as they are strong and unpredictable animals. The main concern was that if the herd entered the farmland, their crops might be damaged. Some even thought that the buffaloes could become dangerous and attack domestic livestock. There was another group that used this situation as an opportunity. Some realized that the return of the buffaloes could attract tourists to the area, including nature tours, wildlife photographers, and various researchers who were willing to spend money to see these buffaloes up close. It created a new economic opportunity for the locals. Ultimately, people's views on this change varied. Some were happy, some were worried, and some were looking for new opportunities. But what was clear was that the buffalo's return had an impact on human lives as well. Now, we are going to talk about a special battle, a confrontation between human commandos and hunting eagles. But why did ancient warriors fight eagles at all? In ancient times, some tribes and warriors used eagles as a symbol of strength and courage. Hunting a large eagle showed how skilled and fearless a warrior was. But hunting an eagle was not an easy task. Eagles were fast, had sharp talons, and attacked from above the sky. Some warriors shot the eagles with bows and arrows, while others tried to catch them alive by setting traps. Sometimes, these clashes happened by chance. For example, when eagles went to the warriors' prey or stole their provisions. In these situations, the warriors had to defend themselves and drive the eagle away or even kill it. So this battle was not an equal fight, but a confrontation between intelligence and strength. The ancient warriors with their weapons and strategies, and the eagles with their speed and flying power. When something changes in nature, there are always scientists who have predictions about it. The release of buffalo was one of them. Many said that this was going to save the ecosystem, but did it really? From the very first days, researchers began to study the changes that were taking place in the environment. One of the first things they noticed was that the vegetation was improving. By grazing, the buffalo prevented the overgrowth of some invasive plants and allowed other species to grow again. This was exactly what was predicted. But something unexpected happened. Scientists expected that the hunters in the area would quickly adapt to the presence of buffalo, but on the contrary, the number of lion attacks decreased. This was because the buffalo moved in large groups, and by cooperating with each other, caused trouble for the hunters. This shows that not everything always goes according to plan, but overall, the scientists were pleased with the outcome of the project and even realized that nature always has things that even the most accurate scientific models cannot predict. Now, we are going to talk about a scary battle in the rivers, hawks versus giant crocodiles. But weren't eagles in the sky? So why should we be afraid of crocodiles? Well, the story started with eagles coming to the riverbanks to hunt. They usually caught the fish on the surface with a quick dive, but the problem was that sometimes there was a hidden predator waiting for them below, a crocodile. Crocodiles were masters of camouflage and could stay underwater for hours without moving. When an eagle got too close to the water, a crocodile would suddenly jump out of the water at incredible speed and try to catch it. Many eagles resting on the branches near the river were surprised by the crocodile's sudden jump. Even sometimes, when the eagles were busy eating a prey on the ground, the crocodiles would quietly and silently approach them and make a lightning attack. Therefore, the eagles knew that the rivers always had a hidden danger. So although the eagles were the rulers of the sky, they always had to be careful near the rivers, because one wrong move could turn them into crocodile prey. Now we are going to talk about one of the most fearsome enemies of eagles, an enemy that had no teeth, no claws, but could destroy eagles. Fierce storms. Eagles were masters of flight and always played with the air currents. But when a storm came, everything changed. Strong winds could take control of the flight from the eagles and throw them miles away. Many eagles that built nests in tall trees lost their nests in terrible storms. Some even got caught in the air and could not control their direction. If the storm was very strong, it could drag the eagles straight into the sea or dangerous mountains where there was no way back. Torrential rains were another problem. When eagles' feathers get wet, they become heavy and it becomes difficult for them to fly. That's why many eagles try to find a safe place during a storm and don't fly until the weather calms down. So even the kings of the sky have a great enemy, storms that can destroy everything with a single move. Subscribe to our channel. Thank you for being with us until the end of the video, and God bless you until the next video. Welcome to the dark and violent world of the past. Now let's imagine 1,000 years in the future, a time when there was no civilization, no laws, and only one principle ruled: survival or death. Here, in a world full of deadly predators, deadly cold, and unknown enemies, only the strongest could survive. But who was the strongest warrior of this era? Did early humans rule? So how did they rule in this wild world? Did they only hunt, or were they hunted themselves? This documentary takes you to the heart of history, to the time of brutal battles, fearsome tribes, and hunters who had no mercy. Do you want to know how our ancestors survived in this world? So join us and get ready for a journey like you've never seen before. First, we are going to talk about the strongest warriors among early humans, those who survived the darkest era of history in a world full of wild predators with strength and skill. But how did these warriors become strong? How did they stand up to giant predators with their bare hands and simple tools? Early humans had the strongest warriors in history among them, people who fought not only to survive, but also to hunt and dominate nature. They defeated mammoths and saber-toothed tigers with their bare hands or with stone spears. Each tribe had its own warriors. Some of them were masters of bare-handed combat. Others were fast and agile and hunted from a distance with spears and arrows. But one of the most important secrets of their power was in cooperation. They didn't hunt alone, but with planning and tactics, they defeated even the greatest predators in nature. From clever traps to coordinated attacks, everything was calculated. And most importantly, these warriors didn't rely on physical strength alone to survive. Intelligence and strategy were their main weapons, and this is what ultimately made them stronger than all other predators and take over the world. Now, we are going to talk about the terrible enemies of early humans. In a world where survival was the rule, early humans not only had to hunt for food, but also had to be careful of deadly predators, saber-toothed tigers, cave bears, and creatures that only fossils remain today. But how did they survive against these real monsters? In the Ice Age, saber-toothed cats were ruthless hunters. With their long, razor-like teeth, they could kill prey with a single blow. They roamed vast grasslands and threatened even early humans with lightning-fast attacks. But humans learned to recognize the ambushes of these predators with their own intelligence and avoid them. Cave bears were also one of the largest predators of that time. Imagine a bear that was bigger than even the largest bears today, with deadly claws and jaws that could crush bones. These monsters took refuge in caves, but early humans also sought shelter, and this led to deadly clashes between them. But perhaps the deadliest enemies were not large animals, but small creatures. Venomous snakes, giant spiders, and even packs of dire wolves could all pose a deadly threat. Early humans faced many predators, but the ability to cooperate, use fire, and make primitive weapons transformed them from victims to intelligent hunters. Imagine being trapped in a wild world, without warm clothes, without shelter, and without any food. Now the only way to survive is to seek help from nature and save yourself with everything you have. This was exactly the challenge that early humans faced. But they did not survive only with physical strength, but also with their thoughts and ingenuity. They were able to survive in the worst conditions. If the frost was severe, they would wear the skins of hunted animals to stay warm. If food was scarce, they would even feed on insects and tree roots. When they were trapped in the desert, they would use the water inside cacti to survive. But the strangest thing was their hunting methods. Some tribes had learned how to kill large animals using natural poisons. Others used swamps as traps, drawing prey into them. But living in the dangerous forests also required a special skill. Some early humans learned to deceive their enemies by imitating the sounds of wild animals. Some tribes even lived in caves filled with bats, just to stay away from wild predators. When we think of historical wars, we think of large armies, heavy armor, and shiny swords. But the first wars in history were something completely different. There were no advanced weapons, no commanders leading the army, but one thing was certain: the battle for survival. What did early humans fight for? Usually for food, territory, and survival. When a tribe realized that another group was entering their hunting grounds, they had no choice but to fight. But what weapons did they use? Primitive weapons included wooden clubs, sharp stones, and crude spears, and even their own hands. Some tribes had clever ways of fighting, such as hiding in trees and attacking suddenly, or even using deadly traps in the path of the enemy. But what is interesting is that some of these wars were not about killing, but about scaring the enemy and making them retreat. Some tribes tried to make themselves look more terrifying by painting their bodies, wearing the skins of wild animals, or even making strange sounds. Over time, wars became more complex, weapons became more deadly, and humans learned how to create war strategies. But it all started somewhere, where the first battles took place in the wild. Imagine a time when there were no buildings on Earth, no cities, no streets, no villages, just wild nature full of dangers. But one day, early humans decided to stay in one place. Instead of wandering through forests and mountains, they decided to build a permanent shelter for themselves. The question is, what were the first homes of humans? Actually, very simple. Some of them used caves, but little by little, they started to build their own shelters with wood, leaves, mud, and stones. And sometimes they even made tents made of animal skins, and sometimes they used thick branches of trees to build houses. These were the first real shelters of humanity. But what happened when villages were formed? Humans realized that if they lived together, they had a better chance of survival. They gathered around water sources, settled near lands where they could grow food and hunt. Gradually, small groups became small communities and early villages emerged. But that was just the beginning. Small villages gradually grew larger and laid the foundations of human civilization. Now think about it. If you had lived at that time, what kind of house would you have built for yourself? In the wild world of the Ice Age, survival was a real challenge. The land was covered in ice, the winds were fierce, and giant animals could turn their hunters into food at any moment. But early humans were smarter than nature had imagined. They had to face real monsters for food and survival. Creatures like giant mammoths, woolly rhinos, and even saber-toothed tigers. But how could a group of early humans, without guns or technology, hunt such huge animals? The secret to their success was teamwork, strategy, and deadly tools. One of their clever methods was to trap their prey. They would lead the mammoths into deep valleys or frozen ground to fall into a trap. Then, they would strike the final blow with stone spears and sharp sticks. Sometimes, humans used fire to help them hunt. By lighting dry branches, they would lure the frightened animals into traps or dangerous swamps. They could adapt to those harsh conditions and continue to survive. So, if you lived during the Ice Age, would you dare to face a giant mammoth? Imagine sitting by the fire on a dark night, the sound of the wind whispering, and strange shadows moving in the darkness. Now imagine that thousands of years ago, early humans were in similar situations, but with a big difference. They didn't know what awaited them in the darkness, but were there really unknown creatures roaming around them? Or were they just their imaginations and fears? Strange evidence has been found in prehistoric caves, paintings that show unusual creatures. Some of them resemble animals, but with features that have never been seen in any other animal. Early humans were terrified of the dark at night. Perhaps the reason was that they saw glowing eyes through the trees, or heard sounds that no known animal could make. Some researchers believe that perhaps species of prehistoric animals were still alive at that time, creatures that later became extinct. And so far, we have not been able to discover them. But there is an even stranger theory that says that these unknown creatures were not just wild animals, but something beyond them. Perhaps early humans saw things that we cannot even imagine today. Things that are remembered today in legends and scary stories. Primitive humans were afraid of the dark at night. Perhaps the reason was that they saw glowing eyes through the trees, or heard sounds that no known animal could understand. Some researchers believe that perhaps species of prehistoric animals were still alive at that time, creatures that later became extinct. And so far, we haven't been able to discover them, but there is an even stranger theory that says that these unknown creatures were not just wild animals, but something beyond them. Perhaps early humans saw things that we can't even imagine today. Things that are remembered today in legends and scary stories. Imagine a dark night. A tribe of early humans gathered around a fire. They danced around the flames, and a strange sound was heard. The sound of wood being chopped, the whistle of hollow horns, and the sound of stones clashing together. This could be the first music in history. But did early humans really have music? Evidence found in ancient caves shows that they not only drew pictures, but they probably also discovered sounds. Bones with precise holes show that the first flutes in history were made thousands of years ago. But music was not just for them. Perhaps they used the sounds they made to scare away wild animals. Perhaps they created more harmony while hunting, or even paid homage to the spirits of nature in magical ceremonies by playing primitive instruments. Many researchers believe that music has been in the human body since the beginning. If we look at modern tribes, we see that they still use sounds for communication, celebration, and even healing. When the sun sets, darkness spreads like a heavy shadow on the ground. Night for primitive people was a real nightmare. In those days, there were no lights and solid walls. The only thing between them was death or survival. A small fire was a great help at that time. Imagine a group of primitive people sitting around a fire in the dark forest. The flames warmed their bodies, but outside this circle of light, glowing eyes lurked among the bushes. Maybe a dire wolf was waiting for the right moment, or maybe a cave bear had smelled them and was approaching. And now the question arises, how did they protect themselves? Fire was the first line of defense. Wild animals were afraid of fire, so humans gathered around the fire at night. But that wasn't enough. They made strange noises, made scary shadows on the cave walls with long sticks, and some tribes even smeared themselves with mud and dirt so that their body odor wouldn't attract predators. But the worst moments were when the fire went out. Absolute darkness, deadly silence, and the sound of a branch breaking. Just a moment of carelessness was enough to turn an ordinary night into the last night of their lives. We think we know everything about early humans, but some truths were never written in history books, things that are scarier than any story you've ever heard. Today, we're going to delve into secrets that were probably better left undiscovered. Imagine entering an ancient cave. There are animal paintings on the walls, but in a dark corner, strange and terrifying faces are carved. Creatures with giant heads, unusual bodies, and eyes that seem to still stare at us in the darkness. Were these just the imaginations of early humans, or did they see something we don't know about? And this is just the beginning. Archaeologists in different parts of the world have found the remains of bodies that show that they were victims of horrific rituals. Bones that show that perhaps early humans, sometimes out of hunger or strange beliefs, ate their own kind. Was this a custom or a way to survive in the darkest days of history? Have you ever wondered what would happen if wolves came back one day with no one to stop them? Wolves that weren't afraid of lions. They fed on mammoths and were last seen thousands of years ago, deep in the ice. They really existed. They were called dire wolves. And now, if true, news has been released that will shake the world. Scientists are trying to bring these giant creatures back to Earth. With the help of their fossils, DNA remains, and advanced genetic technologies. In this video, we're going to enter the world of these prehistoric wolves together, find out how they lived, how they became extinct, and most importantly, is it really possible for them to come back? If you want to know what's behind this crazy project, stay with us until the end of this video. Dire wolf, a strange name for a creature more ferocious than anything you've ever seen. This prehistoric wolf was not something you'd want to encounter on a dark night. If you think modern wolves are scary, you should know that the dire wolf was twice as big, hairier, stronger, and more ruthless than them. Its body was full of muscles. Its jaws were designed to crush bone. In the Ice Age, on the frozen plains of North America, it was an unrivaled hunter. It didn't hunt alone. They moved in packs. They were smart. They had a plan. They killed and divided. What were their prey? Young mammoths, prehistoric horses, bison, and even saber-toothed tigers that made mistakes. Dire wolves ruled the plains for a time. But with the end of the Ice Age, their prey dwindled, the weather warmed, and eventually, these ice giants disappeared from the face of the earth, one by one, not because they were weak, but because conditions were no longer suitable for them. But now, after thousands of years, their names are being heard again. It seems they are not going to be forgotten forever. If you happen to see a regular wolf in the middle of a dark forest one day, you're not that lucky. Because if you were to go back in time and encounter a dire wolf, your chances of survival are almost zero. This creature was no ordinary wolf. It was a true hunting machine. A body twice as heavy as a modern gray wolf, jaws that could crush mammoth bones, and teeth designed only for killing, not leaving alive. The dire wolf didn't hunt alone. They attacked in packs, precise and calculated. Once they had their prey in sight, there was no escape. Unlike modern wolves, dire wolves showed no mercy even to their enemies. When they were hungry, they saw a saber-toothed tiger as their rival. Then the tiger was no longer an enemy. It was just a meal. But what made them truly dangerous was the combination of their ferocity and intelligence. This combination meant only one thing: to destroy everything that stood in their way. Now, you understand why they were called the terror of the Ice Age, because they didn't just hunt, they ruled. They were the kings of the frozen plains for years, with their gigantic bodies, deadly jaws, and strategies that left no prey alive. But with all this power and intelligence, the dire wolves one day disappeared forever. What happened? What could wipe out such a huge predator from the face of the earth? The first suspect is drastic climate change. With the end of the Ice Age, large prey disappeared one by one, and the dire wolf, with its massive body, could not adapt quickly to smaller prey. The second possibility is competition with gray wolves. Today's wolves entered the Americas from Asia, lighter, faster, and most importantly, smarter at adapting. When resources became scarce, those who were more frugal and flexible survived. And the last secret, perhaps the most bitter, the presence of humans, new hunters who killed both prey and competitors. The dire wolves entered into a war, not only with nature, but also with us. A war that, in the end, they were the losers. Now all that remains of them are fossils. And an unanswered question: if they were to return to this world once more, would they win this time or lose again? Everyone called it the giant wolf. But were they really that big? Were the dire wolves just a bigger version of today's wolves? Or something completely different that only their appearance fooled us? Let's take a look at the reality. In appearance, they looked a lot like gray wolves. A shaggy body, a long snout, sharp teeth. But DNA says something else. When scientists examined the genes left in the fossils, they came to a strange conclusion. Dire wolves were not wolves at all. They were from a completely different branch of the canine family, which split off from wolves millions of years ago. They were not only genetically different, but even their lifestyles were different. Dire wolves were more like creatures between dogs, wolves, and even hyenas, powerful, social, and much more ferocious than any modern wolf. In fact, if one of them were alive today, it would look nothing like the wolves we know in the wild, and we would probably call it an unknown species. So the next time someone says the dire wolf is the same as the wolf today, tell them, no, my friend, it was something else, something really different. Until a while ago, everyone thought that the wolves would disappear forever. There was no way to return them. But now, a crazy project is proving the opposite. Scientists have succeeded in extracting parts of the DNA of this giant predator from the frozen fossils of the wolves, and that means a big step towards reviving them. A project called Recreation of Dire Wolf is currently underway in some of the world's largest laboratories. They are trying to make a live copy of dire wolf by combining the obtained genes with the DNA of today's wolves. But there is a big question in the middle. If they succeed, will a real wolf be born, or just an incomplete version that only uses its name? Now, not everything is just science. They are very worried. What will happen if this creature comes to life? The creature that was the king of hunting thousands of years ago is now going to set foot on the earth again. But today, the earth has changed a lot, and then reviving them must make a basic idea to keep them. This is not just a scientific project. This is a game with history and nature, and maybe in a few years, the image of this legendary hunter will be seen again in the snow of the mountains, but this time, not in the fossils, but in the real world. Imagine waking up one morning and reading on the news, the first dire wolf in 10,000 years has been reborn. The howl that echoes through the snowy mountains is no longer the sound of an ordinary wolf. It's a dire wolf, bigger, stronger, more ferocious than any wolf you've ever seen. But now the question is, what if it really comes back? Dire wolves were pack hunters. They were smart, fast, and ruthless. And if they come back to life, they might move in large packs, just like they did in the past. But not in the Ice Age. In today's world, what if they get out of control? What if they enter urban areas? What if they can't find food and get close to humans? Some scientists say, we just want to study the past, but the past should not be left in today's world. The return of the dire wolves may be the beginning of a chapter that no one is yet prepared for, because when the dire wolves return, the world has changed for them, and the main question is, can our world cope with them again, or is this an irreparable mistake? We think we know the dire wolves, but the truth is that they are still full of mysteries. A creature that went extinct thousands of years ago still leaves behind many unanswered questions. For example, no one knows exactly how intelligent dire wolves were. Did they hunt in packs like modern wolves, or did they have a different and mysterious strategy that we have not yet been able to discover? Another mystery is their voice. We have no sound from dire wolves. We do not know what their howls were like. Was it scarier than the howls of modern wolves? Or maybe even completely different? Even their exact appearance is a mystery. Scientists still disagree on what color their fur was or what their eyes looked like. And that means the image we have of them in our minds may be just a guess. And one of the strangest mysteries is, are they really extinct? Or could one of them still be alive in a remote part of the world? All it takes is one footprint to change the whole story. Dire wolves are a great unsolved mystery in the prehistoric world, and each new fossil may open a new door to their dark and unknown world. If you woke up one morning and saw a real dire wolf standing in front of your house, how would you feel? fear, excitement, or some kind of confusion, because it might actually happen much sooner than you think. Scientists have been searching for extinct animals to return for a long time. And now, direwolf DNA has been found, almost intact and ready to be recovered. But here's an important question. Should we do it? On the one hand, we could see one of the most powerful carnivores of the Ice Age again. A fantastic scientific opportunity to better understand evolution, genetics, and past ecosystems. But on the other hand, we also have to think about ethics. If we bring them back, where will they live? What will they eat? Will they become dangerous? And if humans cause their extinction, do we really have the right to play with them again? The return of the direwolves is not just a science project. It's a profound question about the future of nature, humans, and the boundary between science and morality. What do you think? Are you willing to live with them? Or would you rather they just remain in history? Well, until a few minutes ago, the direwolf was just a name, a mythical creature in archaeology books or in Ice Age tales. But now, you and I, together, have been able to take a journey among sharp teeth, claw marks, and mysteries that still remain unsolved after thousands of years.